Good evening, everyone. The time is 5:01 p.m. and the Belton Independent School District Board of Trustees are now convened in a special meeting on Monday, August the 5th, 2024. A quorum of board members is present. This meeting has been duly called and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. First item on the agenda is public comments. There are none. Moving on to item 3, action items. Consider, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding the approval of career and technical education program device refresh. Dr. Golden?
All right. Well, Gabby Nino has joined us, and she's just got a couple of quick remarks about this particular action item.
Good evening. Thanks for having me this evening. We, since Ms. Ayers began in her position, we've been working really closely with our instructional technology team to examine the technology devices that our CTE programs have access to. And what we found is that there hasn't been a cycle in place for those devices. We would just make purchases over time. And our experiences for students, specifically in field-based experiences, are pretty dependent on the technology access they have in front of them. And so over the summer, she, as well as our instructional technology team, walked every single CTE classroom that we have in our district, as well as identified some budget efficiencies. And if we can take some action tonight on approval of these funds, we will be able to purchase 3 Mac labs that will put us into a 5-year cycle so that we can maintain and upgrade and keep our CTE technology devices up to date for our students and their experiences in field. So I come to you tonight to ask for consent on purchase of those resources.
Any questions, comments?
I saw him. I want to go play with him.
Oh, okay. Chris wants to play with it.
I ought to be invited.
Chris is committed to someday coming to teach CTE,
Yeah.
so
All
we're
right.
excited.
All right. You can teach us all something, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll wait till Ms. McDonald comes back in so we can entertain a motion.
Here's Jeopardy music.
So whilst we're waiting, so if approved, will those be here and ready for the start of the school?
Yes, and that's why we asked to tack on this evening, because we're able to do that. We'll be able to use our $23-24 that will help us get into that cycle and get the computers for the coming school year.
And being a lab, these don't go home with students, they
They
stay.
don't. No.
That's what I,
Yeah, these are like, they're not laptops, they're like desktop units.
yeah.
Questions?
Well.
You've been invited.
We do, but we have to know we're all.
Okay. She's checking right now, I'm not sure. So, with the motion, with there being no motion, can we take a break? And then come back and take that, and then hear if there's a motion?
We can do that.
Okay.
Well, let's recess real quick.
She'll be in just about. She's on call, and so she had to step out.
Okay. Okay.
So we'll wait on the recess.
Okay.
She'll be right in. She's on her way back in right now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I've heard that's the most important part of the day.
Awesome.
Right. When we recess, we're going to go down the hall a bit, right, and then come back to it. Oh.
We're gonna
We're gonna
recess,
go
yes.
the other way.
The other way.
Recess the other way.
Yeah.
Yes, and then we'll come back in,
Back in the old place.
so.
How long are we scheduled to be here? 3 hours?
6 to 8?
6. 5 to 8. 5 to 8.
Oh, sorry, 5 to 8.
5.
5 to 8, okay?
All right, no questions or comments, then we'll go we have a motion to approve the Career and Technical Education Program device refresh at Lake Belton High School as presented?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Norwood, second. Mr. Flores. There being no further discussions or questions, all in favor, please raise your hand. That passes 7-0. That concludes our action items. The time is 5:07 p.m. and we're going to take a brief recess. All right, we're going. The meeting is now resumed at 5:14 p.m. Moving on to item 4, governance team training and development. Dr. Golden?
Okay, well, board, thank you for being here this evening. Jody's going to give you some background on her amazing career, but Jody Duran is here this evening to lead us through our Team of 8 training, and just thank everybody for taking the 2 surveys that we're going to use throughout this process. And so just excited you're here, Jody, and we're going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to work with this board. I've seen and met several of you at different conferences, SLI and TASB, and it's nice to reconnect. I am a lifelong educator. I spent 31 years in public education. I retired in 2022. My career actually started, I know this area well, because my career started in Waco. I worked for Waco ISD for several years and met one of our superintendents, not one of our superintendents, when we were in the doctoral program. I say we, my husband and I, he's in the business too, but when we were in our doctoral program, we met a superintendent that really took us away from Waco, and our career just went from there. And so I've spent 31 years as a teacher, as a campus administrator, central office administrator, working in human resources, also curriculum and instruction. And in the last 10 years, I served as superintendent in Elgin ISD, which was a real pleasure and honor. And so retired, and now I have the opportunity to work with Mo Casey. Just really a wonderful firm. They have a long-standing reputation, over 30 years in business. We provide a lot of services to school districts, and this is one of them: team training, strategic planning, school finance support, academics, accountability, assessment supports, advocacy. So there's a whole realm of services that we provide, but this is one of them. And so I thank you for choosing us. What does Southwest Airlines say? We know you have many choices, but thank you for choosing Mo Casey to serve the board in your training. So that's me. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But I also want to get to know you all, and if you happen to notice on the screen, I'm asking you 3 questions, and I know you all are having dinner, and so I'll try to catch you when your mouth is not full. You asked how long this would take. We've scheduled from 5 to 8, but I will say you all did some homework in advance, and there's a very good chance that we won't need, because you've done some things in advance, it has really allows us to be more efficient with our time today. So it may be more like 2.5 hours. We might be out of here by 7:30 at the latest. So if that's okay with you all, if you're not a stickler for that 3-hour, because I can talk. I can talk.
Oh, so can we.
Well, that's what that was the next thing I was gonna say is I really want this to be interactive and conversational, and if you agree with something, feel free to say amen, and if you don't necessarily agree, let's talk about it. So I think that's what team building is about, is really having conversation across the table and with one another and understanding where we all come from. But at the end of the day, we're here for the same purpose, and that's really to support this community and our kids primarily, and their outcomes. We say student outcomes, and that's our #1 priority. But there's a whole lot of tenets that go along with that. There's a whole lot of pieces to that puzzle. So I don't know who wants to go first, but I'd love to know a little bit more about you. Why did you run for the board? How long have you served? And what has surprised you the most in your role as a board member?
Okay. So initially I was approached and asked
think so. No. But I attended a few meetings and really got interested in the way things were run as far as the board meetings and the content. And that led me to believe that maybe I could make some type of difference on the board. We're still finding that out. I've been on the board for 11 years.
Wow.
We're still researching.
Yeah.
And then as far as what has surprised me the most is that because we've had different board members throughout those 11 years that I've been here, it doesn't really surprise me, but I'm really glad for it, is that even though we've had different bodies, the message has pretty much been the same. We are here for this community, that we are student first. We want to make sure that our folks are taken care of, and that has been the message. You know, I'm paraphrasing, but we've been able to give a unified message, and this has been a unified board, regardless of the bodies that have served here. So I'm really appreciative of that.
That's pretty awesome. That's great. That's not true of every board in the state. You all
We
probably
know.
know that if you
We
all go
know.
to these conferences. And when we get to the inventories, I printed the results of the inventories when we talked about that. It's pretty, it tells a big story about you all as a collective group, and it's impressive. So I appreciate those comments. I can see that in the survey.
I'll go. I ran about a year and a half ago. I was approached as well, and so I've been on the board for about 15 months, not 11 years, and it was relatively new. So last year was quite a lot of bright eye, seeing how things run and operate as far as the amount of hours and everything that's required and everything.
More than just that one meeting.
More than just that one, yeah. But I ran because I care about our community like everyone else here. Our children go to Belton schools, and I think that has surprised me the most is just seeing how, what's the right word, but maybe parallel or consistent the culture is across the campuses, and getting to go on to each campus, whether it's elementary or high school, the quality of education in the classrooms, and just the involvement is amazing. So I love it.
It's awesome.
I'll go next. Ran for the board, just similar to Suzanne's. People approached me, the spot was coming open, and I said no several times. But it was coming open regardless, so I eventually decided to run. I was promised nobody would run against me, and that turned out to be a lie. I am finishing up. I'm in the last year of my third term, so coming up on 9 years. And then surprised me the most, I'd say like everybody else, one, the amount of time that it takes. I would say the other two things that have really surprised me, I grew up in public education, probably like everybody else that's here. Well, you didn't. You grew up in a private school, right? Public school. Oh. But my parents were educators and administrators, so I figured I knew a lot about public education. It turns out I really didn't. And I would say the other one that's happened in the last couple of years that surprised me the most is the amount of just bad publicity that public education now gets. I'd never seen it before in my life, but it's in the last few years it's become very prevalent.
And you all see firsthand what's happening in the schools and the culture that lives and breathes and the difference y'all are making, and yet that bad publicity still exists. It's more of a narrative than it is a reality. All right, who's next?
Okay. I ran, I was one of two at-large positions. Record and I are two at-large. And when I first ran, one of the at-large candidates was going to be stepping down, and it caused 4 people to, me being one, and then the other incumbent being one, to run, and it was a hotly contested race, and we went through all of that. But it was just one of those challenges I wanted to
ran, I think very similar to several already said, being approached. Never thought that day would come to be asked, just to consider being on the board. And I stepped in to someone who had to step out of their term. So I came in as an appointee and then ran unopposed. And so I ran unopposed this past spring, right? Yes. The days are just quickly day and years ago. So I'm about 3.5 years in.
Okay.
And so, and to have some public education experience, taught 11 years in the classroom. And also, like Jeff, I have family on both sides of my parents' side of educators, everywhere from teachers to special education to counselors to administrators. And so that was always the talk, was education. So, and then I also have 4 kids and all of various needs. And so I've been able to experience just having a child in special education and a kid who didn't grow up in the foster, we adopted. And so learning how the perspective of a child in that regard. So just having kids with just different needs. And so that has made me, and is still making me a better parent. And then what has surprised me the most, I think it's kind of been said, is, because I have loved public education for so many years, that just the narrative, and then just how much people in general, not just in our community, don't know about public education. And whereas some of this, for those of us that have grown up in it, and it's almost like a common sense that there are some people that just don't know. And that's not anything to say negative or ugly about, people that aren't informed, but just because I feel like that's something that we talk about often, is how do we inform our community of the needs and the budget needs, and there's at large a lot of people just don't know, and so that's been kind of a surprise to me.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, I'll go. Why? My mom was a K through 12 health and phys ed teacher. Just exposed early on to just what that's all about. I can remember sitting in some of her classes, like, when my day was done, just kind of watching what was going on. From there, my wife is a music therapist. And so when we graduated from college and we were in the Washington, D.C. area, she was in the Fairfax County Public School System, particularly focused on special ed. And so being able to see kind of the magic, that was really kind of going on there. And then when we moved here, I was involved with helping to get the computer science programs kind of up and running with Project Lead the Way and things like that from a corporate perspective, right? Had no desires of, necessarily being on the board, but it was important to my other life, my paying job, to be involved. And that's also the space that I work in. And so I got to really see how some of the sausage is made, right? And how some of this stuff comes to fruition. And like many others, I got a phone call that the person who was in my seat was thinking about retiring, and they were trying to figure out who some folks are in the community that might be interested in running, and so I took that phone call, and I don't know that reality matches the phone call exactly. I think reality requires a lot more hours, I think, than the phone call. But and it was definitely not part of my plan. It was not great timing. But one of the lessons that I've learned is, never say never, right? Don't say no. Like, if there's an opportunity that shows up that, is kind of in line, seize it and take it. And I knew that if I didn't take it right then and there, like, it might not come back. And so it was the right time for me. It's the furthest thing from anything that I would do naturally. Like, running for an election is not anything that I would, like, yeah. And somehow I've survived through unopposed and then 2 opposed elections. So I'm just starting my 3rd term. What surprised me the most, I don't know that I have anything original, but I just, the narrative recently, like, just lack of knowledge of, like, what actually happens in school these days, compared to when everybody, went to school, so it's been interesting.
Yeah. So now you see how the sausage is made. I know a thing
Yeah.
or two about sausage.
Yeah.
I'm from Elgin.
Yeah.
That's true. We're the sausage capital of
There you
Texas.
go.
I
There you
just
go.
have to make sure you
We'll
all know
take
that.
Absolutely.
Next time I'll bring sausage.
Yeah. We got airplanes. What's up?
Well,
Where's the
you
sausage?
did, yeah, I know, right? All right.
Okay, well, I was actually appointed by 4 of the active members now. This is in September 2018. I think I had gotten an email from Janet, actually. And then I ran unopposed in 19, and then this last election, I was opposed, and it was a bit political. And then about to come up for re-election next year. So I've been on the board now 6 years. Why did I run? You know, as I look at my life, you know, there's an old saying that education is the great equalizer, and I think I would be the poster child for that, because it has transformed not only me but my family, the trajectory of my kids. I mean, it's changed. It's allowed us to see things that we would have never seen without education. That people before me had no clue. Right. So it made a huge difference. The other reason I ran is because this district gave so much to me as a kid. So I'm giving back. What surprised me the most, I think the discord and conflict at the most basic level of government, which is this, you know, municipalities and school board. That's the most basic level, and how political that has gotten. I'm really disturbed by that, and I don't know what to make of that, other than the powers that be maybe want to shake it up at the local level so much to you know, because the ultimate goal is to really tarnish public education, which would be a great travesty for kids that grew up like me. I can't imagine what would happen, right? Yeah, it's just like, I wish I could talk to, I mean, I know we'll be in the court, I wish I could talk to Greg Abbott and say, hey man, I lived it, you know? You can't, you gotta stop. I don't mind people having, I mean, the voucher thing and all that, right? But let's have an equal footing here, okay?
Yeah.
Make it equal, and we can do that. That's what you want to do. But let's not hold teachers hostage along the way, because ultimately it's going to affect our kids. And I don't I don't see the right in that anywhere, right? So anyway,
It's good.
I could go on for
I know.
another hour about that.
You know what I'm gonna say amen.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you, everything you just
Yeah.
said. Well, I love just hearing your stories, and certainly what's interesting is so many of you were encouraged to run or tapped to be appointed, and so maybe it wasn't at the top of your list to become a board member, but somebody saw something in you, obviously, to say, you should do this, and this community needs you, and y'all are doing this for the right reason. And I know you're doing it for the right reason, because like when I go back to the results of those inventories that you all took, it's pretty impressive to see what this group is all about, who you all are as a collective body. So we are losing some of our local control swag, you know, and that's one of the things that school boards used to have a little bit more of, is autonomy to make decisions about their local school districts, and we've seen that just chipped away at, and then we've seen more partisan politics creeping in. I don't think any of us, Dr. Golden, you didn't get into into education to be a politician, right?
They have figured that out.
But that's become the nature of the job of a superintendent, and maybe even the jobs of you all as board members. I did not, I know you, but do you want to share a little bit just for I mean, I've known you for 12 years, so I don't know, like, prior to that.
So, and they know, I didn't I didn't go to school to teach. I went into medical research a little bit when I was in college and right after, and discovered that was not my thing. And so it took substitute teaching actually in classrooms like life skills and functional academics classrooms to find my passion for education. I was like, I like this. I can do this, and I loved that. I started out with staff that really believed in each and every student, and that each and every student within a school system could grow and learn, and that's what got me excited about it. And so I'm excited to be here. I've been here 4 years now. I'm blessed that they let me stay, and I'm excited. We got to see teachers today, professional learning, well, really last couple of days, and there was an awesome energy. You know, I think everybody shows up to work every day wanting to do a good job for the children in this community, and you really felt that, you know, in the classrooms and with the teachers I talked with. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
One of you all know this. By the way, we're going to talk today, and most of what I say today is probably nothing new. And I know we've got to check that box of team building, but I do want to I hope we enjoy the time together and have that conversation. You already know this. One of your most important jobs as a board member is to hire the superintendent. And you all have done a heck of a job hiring. The last two I know of for sure are really outstanding, but you all hit the jackpot with Dr. Golden. She's amazing, and I have known her for a long time, and I celebrated with you all when you all named her. I was cheering her on. So you all did a great job in selecting another leader to just continue the vision of this district and community. I'm going to go to the next slide, and I want you to think about. I'm an Edward Deming fan, or William Edward Deming, and here's. And I love quotes too, by the way. Does that speak to anybody? What does that tell you? What does that sort of say to you when you read that?
This would describe every restaurant in Belton County because they don't actually know what they're doing. But they like food and they want to open a restaurant. So they don't know how to cook. So
That is a great
It just got real.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
I mean, it speaks to intentionality for me, right? Like it's not good enough to like have the happy accident like result in the best, right? But like you got to have some intentionality around it, right? You know what you're doing, you know what you're trying to do, like you're working to get there, right? And it's purposeful, right?
Yeah. Anyone else? I think that's right on. Are any of you familiar with, Google did a research study. It was more of an internal study. It was called the Aristotle Project. Anybody familiar with the Aristotle Project that they did? It's in 2012. And they were actually looking internally at their own organization, the top 100 performing teams. And what they were looking for is what is it that's causing all of these teams to consistently be successful in the work that they're doing. And one indicator just kept coming up over and over, and it was clarity. Clarity on what to do, and clarity on why they were doing it. And that's, what are you doing? I mean, if you're cooking, what are you doing? If you're gonna open a restaurant, what's the big picture? Why are you doing it? And when people understand the big picture and have clarity of what you're doing, then you can execute on that. Too often, we don't always, people with good intentions, hard workers within the organization, if they don't know what they're doing, they're spending a lot of energy being inefficient in what they're trying to do. So your role, and you all know this, your role as a board is to set the direction. You guys are the ones that are saying, this is where we're going. You set the vision and direction for the district, and you have to be very clear about that. And the other thing we have to understand is there's so much that we can do in public education, but we can't do everything. So you've got to really narrow your focus. What are the big rocks that we want to really tackle and really focus on what will be our goals that we are going to really direct our attention to. And then you leave it up to the leadership team to execute on that once you've defined what the direction is. So that's one of my favorite quotes. The other, you'll see Deming again. You can't see his name on this. I apologize. I don't know why it's not showing up, but this is another Deming. When, you know, if we do lack clarity, if there is some difficulty with, you know, again, systems and processes, how systematic are we? Think about the organization as a unified whole. Are we working in sync, or are there silos that we have to address? Is everybody moving in the same direction? The reality is, it's generally not the people within the system that's the problem. It's the lack of systems that tend to be the problem. And so that's where clarity comes in. Clarity from the highest level, providing the direction, and then your leadership, understanding that we've got to look at our systems within the organization to make sure everybody knows what their role is. So this is about systems thinking. Why do we really focus on a systems approach? Well, governance is a systems job. If you're familiar, are y'all familiar with the Governance Core? Have y'all read Governance Core by Campbell and Full? And so a lot of this is going to sound really familiar to you. That's a really good book. But they make it a point to say the highest performing trustees have a governance mindset and understand that the system works as a whole, and not as siloed or individual type departments or groups and so forth. But a systems approach, it is about systemic thinking, and it is about looking at we think these are the big four buckets that really you as a board should maintain a focus on: improve student outcomes. Any of y'all go through Lone Star Governance ever? Did y'all do Lone Star Governance? Lone Star Governance is, and that's generally administered by, or not administered, it's a training the TEA does, and it's very good. But they only focus on, that training is a 3-day, full days, and they're focused on improved student outcomes. How do you as a board really address student outcomes? But we think there's other things that contribute to that. It's not the only, it's the most important thing, but if you don't really pay attention to these other things, your staff, and by the way, things are tough right now. If you think about the profession, the teaching profession, there's no pipeline. There's no pipeline of teachers coming into the profession, and I think the latest statistic I heard was nearly 60% of teachers in the profession right now in Texas either are not certified or coming out of alternative certification programs working on certification. So these are not necessarily folks that have naturally chosen education. That's not bad. This is something they want to do. But the fact is, we've got to focus on the staff piece of it. And then, of course, somebody mentioned how involved the community is, increased community satisfaction, involvement, and support. When you have a strong, engaged community, that plays into this systems approach. If you don't have the support from your community, that can be a harm to the system. But I think the fourth, the fourth bucket, which is a huge component or huge responsibility of this board, is looking at the financial aspect of the district. You have a responsibility to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars that are coming in, and how you're looking at what's our return on investment to this community. So why a systems approach? This is why we do what we do.
Those look like our goals.
Yeah.
Jody, what does a systems approach mean to you?
To me, a systems approach is looking at the entire organization as a whole and making sure that, I heard somebody talk about culture. You can go from one campus to another, and that culture exists across the district. That doesn't happen by accident. You have to build that over time, and you build that by I also heard, Suzanne, I think you said it, the different boards that have, whether it's been this sitting board or different members coming in and out, does the board continue to have a common vision and speaking the same language? That doesn't mean you all necessarily agree with everything. That you don't necessarily agree on everything. This is not a rubber stamp position that you all are living in, but you're unified and you respect one another and you respect differences of opinions. But to your point, systems thinking is making sure we're all moving in the same direction. You got a lot of pieces. You got departments, you got campuses, the board. Does everybody has a role, but not everybody is in every role. Do we know what our role is? And we'll talk about that in a minute. It's one of your handouts. We'll talk about the different roles that exist within the organization. So strategic mindset. You all took an inventory, the good governance inventory, leading with the strategic mindset. Strategy is the job of governance. It's part of your governance job is strategy. And how do you strategically think about what you do? Well, you set vision and goals, systems and processes. You look at progress and accountability. Those 6 indicators. That's the responsibility of the board. The inventory that you all took actually evaluated the first 5: vision, goals, systems, progress and accountability, advocacy and engagement, synergy and teamwork. Financial stewardship, we add that one because we think it's so important, because it is the money. It is one of your primary responsibilities, and that's really embedded in all of those. And so while you didn't necessarily answer questions specifically about financial stewardship, it is built into those other 6 indicators. And this is what we're looking for. When we're looking at the results of an inventory, have you formally adopted a shared vision and measurable goals? Have you adopted processes, systems, policies to support the district's vision? And what do you all as a board think about that? Boards, do you understand the difference between management and oversight? Do you systematically advocate for students, staff, and parents? Not just on a local level, but on a state and national. Again, being politicians is not necessarily why we're charged to be in the roles that we're in right now. But it's become part of our responsibility to do that. Do we operate as a unified team of 8, understanding the difference between uniform and unified? Uniform is just checking the box and everybody says yes and it's a rubber stamp. But unified is really understanding that we have differences of opinions, and at the end of the day, whatever the decision of the board is, we lock arms and we support one another, and we say this is the direction, this is the will of the board, and we're going to support it. Whether you voted that way or not, it's the will of the board, we're going to support that. And the board is committed to resource allocation, aligned to your goals, and committed to financial stewardship. I provided you, we generally, when I'm working with a board, we generally spend a lot of time with the good governance inventory, and we're not going to. This is because we don't have to. This is the color-coded chart that I gave you, and this is the first time you've taken it. That doesn't mean there's not room to grow or to improve. I mean, pretty much everything on here is green. That's very unusual. When we go into a district, we generally see 2 or 3 of these green, and the rest either yellow or orange, which tells us that there's.
Oh no, I'm.
Are you shocked?
Yeah, I'm shocked.
Not well, and that's because sometimes when they're reading this, like ensures the vision aligns. Does our not everybody necessarily agrees with that, but you all are like 100%. Like it was amazing. I'm looking at the results. I'm like, well, this is easy to code. They're not always that easy to code. The one area and I thought was interesting that we generally see some variation. But we generally see, and I was just talking to one of my colleagues the other day, I said, have you noticed that advocacy and engagement, we usually see orange in that area, where, boards don't really necessarily, or a team of 8 doesn't really necessarily understand or see their role in advocacy or how they do that. That's not the case with you all. We've got got some green, and you've got some yellow. And most of the time, I'm not putting anybody on the spot. I'm not going to say who said don't know. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot. But there is one person, and we usually will recognize that that's probably someone newer to the board. Because they maybe just don't know. Did I nail it?
I don't know.
I don't know. We're not pointing fingers, but generally speaking, that's what we find. So we normally would spend a lot more time on this inventory, but we don't have to. But I would say this. I think it's two things I would say. One, when you do have a turnover of board members, I think this is a good onboarding opportunity. These are the things that a board needs to understand is their role. And when you're onboarding them, if they don't know, I don't know, that's probably a good onboarding thing to say, here's our system. Do we have a system? Here's our system for developing vision and goals. Here's our system for looking at progress and accountability. Here's our system for advocacy and engagement. And so that brings clarity to new people coming on board. The other thing I would say is, if you do find that you all are struggling in any of these areas, and we do recommend that you do some regular checks, quarterly checks on this. You can do that on your own, or you can have a facilitator come in and do that. But if you find that you're sort of wavering on some things, it's a good idea as a board to have conversation about, well, what do we want to do? Like, this is your scorecard. This is like your report card as a board. What do we need to do to get better? And we're all about continuous improvement, yes? So are there any follow-up actions to get to the desired outcome? Even though everything is just about all green, or maybe even in the yellow, do we set legislative priorities as a collective board? And if we don't, is that something we want to do? Especially in light of, I heard you all talking about just the negative narrative out there about public education. What are you all doing about that beyond the local level? What are you doing about that at the state level? And about at the national level, if you have the opportunity? Does everybody know your state rep and senator? You all know them. See, I don't have to worry about you guys.
Yeah. Although I will admit, I think I'm the one that said I don't know for 4.4.
Really?
Yeah. So, yeah. No, absolutely. I don't have any problem saying that. And so that's the one about legislator, State Board of Education, right? All that. And so we do this. We actually do have legislative priorities,
Yep,
right?
that's awesome.
And we have for the last couple of years, right? But the reason I said I don't know is, through a conversation some of us were in recently, sort of the light bulb went off. We have the legislative priorities, but who have we shared those legislative priorities with outside of our local elected officials, right? Like, have we gone to the local chambers? Have we gone to, the local board of realtors? Have we engaged other parts of the community who actually really overlap to really take that further, right? And so that's why I said I don't know. Like, we do it, but I think we could do it. We could improve it, right?
Yeah.
We could juice it up.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And that might be, and literally that might be one of your action strategies, that this is what we're gonna do, and this is where and who's gonna own it, who's gonna be the leader of owning that responsibility. That's really good. And it's not just, by the way, it's not just legislative. You said it, State Board of Education. There's a lot of decisions that get made at the state board level. TEA, there's a lot of compliance things that are happening at the TEA. When they're rulemaking, there's an opportunity for public comment and input. Do you know how to engage with TEA to provide comment to some of these things that don't make sense? So those are things. Things to think about.
That's an interesting one. So we get that information, and if there's something that we think rulemaking around accountability or just whatever the topic is, it goes to the most aligned cabinet member to work with their team to submit their comments and give feedback.
Yeah.
What I haven't done in the last 4.5 months is sent that to y'all. So I've mainly looked at that as an administrative function, and so that might be something, just letting y'all know where we're being asked for comment, and when we're giving comment. So,
and I would say even streamline it if it's something that directly aligns to to your goals in this district, because there's a lot of rulemaking. I don't think you want to read everything that TEA is doing, but if it's appropriate and aligns, then it may be something
Yeah.
that does need to go to the collective board to say, we're going to make a statement about this, and it's not just going to be the superintendent, it's going to be the collective team of 8, and that there's so much more power behind that when it's, elected officials. They laugh at us, superintendent, they're just whining or they're complaining, but when it's elected officials speaking, they tend to listen a lot closer.
Jody, in your experience, you've been at this over 30 years, right?
Yes, sir.
Learning the same thing. So if you were to do this, let's say 25 years ago, would there be a question about advocacy even back then?
Probably not. Probably not.
Right. So one of the things that I don't know, and I can't speak for anyone else, is that I don't know what our limitations are when it comes to that. I mean, because by statute, these are apolitical positions. So in response to one of the questions that you said about what bothers me the most is that bothers me. I don't like the political game, right? So one of the things that I don't know enough of is how much can I do and how much can I not do. I mean, what can I do short of getting in trouble?
Well, I've gotten in trouble before, so I can tell you about that.
I mean, there's definitely an advocacy role that the board plays, and
Right.
that's definitely an important role. In terms of getting in trouble, I guess when advocacy moves into electioneering,
Yeah.
and we've done trainings and know about that, but I think that's where it can get off the rails a bit. But in terms of the work that y'all have been doing as a board in that advocacy role, in one, having legislative priorities, but then also meeting frequently. I mean, when we were in session, we were going down there quite a bit, ensuring that our representatives heard what were the priorities of our school district. And so there is, we will only continue to do that. And I think one of the things Janet and I are going to be going to an event really looking at strategies around developing legislative priorities is to maybe bring a community member with us, bring a teacher with us. They're not just the board's legislative priorities, they represent legislative priorities of our community. And so
And that was in one of the sessions we did at SLI about that, take parents with you, take teachers with you, and like that was one of the steps we kind of hadn't done yet. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think we should continue knocking on their doors, right? But they're not listening. So we need. There's power in numbers. We got to rally the troops, and the troops are the educators.
Yeah.
So how do we reach those folks? Without stepping across certain lines.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we went down there and we think that our representative, at least one of them, was listening to us and was advocating for public schools, but the other was not. I mean, I'm not saying anything bad about the individual. I mean, I like him, but he was on the other side, which is fine.
Yeah.
And I think at least that's where I'm lacking is what else can we do? And I think there needs to be more discussion about that.
Yeah, and I'm sure you know this, it's not just your representatives that you have an opportunity to share the Belton story with. The House Public Education Committee testifying in front of that committee, or at least submitting, now with the House, you can submit written testimony online. You don't even have to go to the Capitol. And there's an opportunity coming up next week, Monday and Tuesday. They've got interim hearings. So there are ways to have a broader voice. And again, you're right, strength in numbers. I think collectively, when you all establish what your priorities are and stay focused and clear on the messaging of that is really important. Now, here's the other thing. You all wear two different hats. You're a citizen and you're a board member, and you have to be really clear about what hat you're wearing when you're talking. you know, so, if, you know.
So what do
if
you say,
it's-
this is manual talking, not manual, yeah, I don't like what you're doing, this is why.
Yeah. I'm a community member, but I'm also a board
Yeah.
member.
But see, the politicians, I think it might be, they expect people to go down there and testify. They expect all of that, okay? What gets their attention is when you've got masses of people that are going, hey, man, something needs to change here. And there are
Yeah.
so many educators in this, I don't know how many teachers there are in the state of Texas, but there's a bunch.
There are about hundreds of
Right.
thousands, yeah.
They've got to
Yeah.
come together, right?
Yeah, yeah. I might disagree with you on one thing. I
What's that?
don't think the legislature necessarily expects or wants us to come up there, because they've made it so difficult.
Yeah.
How hard is it to get off your job to go testify? And think about, you're lucky.
All day.
Look how close you are.
Yeah, all-
You all are only an hour from Austin, maybe, with traffic, and then getting parked and everything. But think about the folks in maybe El Paso or, you know, Rio Grande Valley, and trying to have representation at the Capitol. They've not made it easy. The House is getting better, I will say. Senate, not so much. They're still very analog. Everything's on paper still. Not everything, but they don't make it easy. And you all probably know this, and I don't mean to drift into political stuff, but there have been, every session there's been a bill to try to, they couch it in terms of taxpayer-funded lobbyists, trying to, it's really an approach to try to even minimize the voice of the folks, you know, organizations like school districts and municipalities, cities, and so that's making it more difficult. So that's why but you are correct. It's really during election seasons. You got to be really careful about what you say and when you say it and how you say it. And if you have a personal Twitter account versus a school district Twitter account, you know what you say on each of those can look very differently, or may look very different. You know.
But I feel like y'all have done a good job of hearing from the communities in which you represent, and that helps inform those legislative priorities. And so, you know, I think, you know, us continuing to, you know, people can't take action or consider if they don't even know where we're coming from. And so, if nothing else, continuing to keep that good dialogue and making sure that they represent the priorities of our community. And then hopefully they see us as a school system that, as they're considering legislation and they want to know how it would impact a school district, you know, we want to be able to look at that for them and give them some insight into how that really would play out in a school system. And so, you know, I think that's why we continue. We keep having these one-on-ones, we keep meeting with them, and we'll continue to do that, so that, because that's an important advocacy role for all of us for public schools, but Belton particularly. So.
Let's keep going. Let's talk about strategy and how we execute the work of the board. It starts with mindset. That's a governance mindset is exactly the foundational approach and attitude, not to be confused with agendas. It's attitude that the boards adopt when overseeing the organization and its strategic alignment of systems. We also we talk a lot about systems, and that's the framework. That's generally internal checks and balances. That's the work of your leadership team, but there's got to be a communication mechanism to make sure you all understand that the work that's happening and that it does align to the vision and goals that you all have set, the direction that you all have set. And then there's some, execution tools to help facilitate the direction of the board, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Mostly what we're going to talk about is mindset, though. This is where most of, I think, the work that the board does lives here. Team trust, you all, again, it was really fun to look at your team trust inventory. Actually, it wasn't fun because it was just like, oh, they're just so good. They don't need me. And It's interesting to see, again, there was hardly any variation from, you know, there is a high level of trust. Let me just say this, there's a high level of trust among this group, a very high level of trust. That is not something we commonly see. It's interesting. When you take an anonymous survey, you start to, we see generally a lot more variation. This, there's a whole lot more either neutral, there's very, few neutrals, but high level of agreement and strongly agree. And there's a lot of these where all 8 of you said strongly agree, which is very rare, very rare. So I think we'll talk about the team trust here in just a minute. I'll ask for maybe some thoughts and comments on that. We'll talk about the 3 essential roles. Part of mindset is really understanding the roles that live within the system. And again, it's about alignment, clarity, and efficacy. Continuous improvement. I don't know if you're familiar with the Model Plan, Do, Check Act. We'll look at that model. I see some heads nodding, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. I'd love to know how you all use it within your district to continue, for continuous improvement. Strategic alignment. Again, you'll see a framework, an ARROS framework. How aligned are you all as an organization, and what is it going to take to get to an advanced stage if you're not already there? So we'll start with team trust. I'm going to take each one of these individually. Take a look at what does that mean to you? To know yourself, you must sacrifice the illusion that you already do.
I think you have to move yourself out of the way and be open to new information. You don't necessarily know everything.
100%.
Gotta pull the ego out.
Let go of ego. Take out the ego. Yeah. Have any of you all read the book, The 4 Agreements? 4 Agreements. It's a really good book. It's kind of an unconventional leadership book, but it's exactly that, exactly what you just said. It's sort of understanding that you're only at war with yourself and the preconceived ideas that you may have about anything in general. It's letting go of that. It's letting go of ego to understand the bigger picture. Janet, you said it when you were talking earlier. It was like, I've grown, I've learned a lot, I've opened my mind. That's what that is. It's about taking yourself out of your comfort zone and understanding that maybe there is something else that's possible. So I think that's something that as board members is really important to keep in mind. It's a shift from where I am to where we need to be. It's a shift from me to we, which I think is really powerful. So the team trust, why is it important? We recommend that you all do a team trust inventory at least once a year, if not twice a year. You generally will do this through your team building. But depending on the trust level of the group, we generally say it might be a good idea for you all to revisit. Let's have some conversation and let's come back and see how we are working together. But if you look at it's the second one, chart that I gave you all, it says team self-analysis, Belton ISD team trust self-analysis, and take a look at that. You can see very high level of trust, connectedness, dependability questions, all in the higher level realm. Ability and believability, and again, I'm not asking who, what, when. If somebody wants to speak to any of these, I just open it up. But just taking a look at this, what surprises you, or what confirms what you already know, what resonates with the results of that team trust?
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
You keep saying that this is almost like it's an aberration, but maybe it's not that. But I don't know how you would ever function if it were any other way.
Right.
I mean, how do you get anything done?
Yeah. Have you seen how many school districts the state's starting to take over? It happens because it starts here, and it's either a lack of clarity, a lack of unity, a lack of trust that trickles down all the way down the organization.
You know, I think I told Melinda this, in my day job, you know, we are taught that jurors vote their values. They don't look at evidence, they vote their values.
Mm.
So when this group comes together and there's a question or an issue, I trust them because I know what they value. And I kind of can predict which direction they're going to go, right? I mean, that doesn't mean that we're always on the same page every time, but I look forward to hearing, just like Janet's analogy about restaurants.
Yeah.
That's a perfect analogy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even think of that. I learned something from listening to, that's why I sit back and I a lot of times I'm listening because I know I'm going to learn something, you know? And I've said that to Jeff. Jeff says things sometimes and I'm thinking, man, he's right. I didn't even think of that, right? So I throw the ego outside. I want to learn from these folks.
Yeah.
Because I know what they value and we have that common thread. And the common thread is that we value this community, we value these kids.
Yeah.
So I don't know how, it's unfathomable to me how districts can function. Well, they can't function.
They can't function, that's right.
I agree, I'm not surprised, but I think another reason that we have been able to build such a unified trust with each other is the challenges that we have faced.
Mm-hmm.
And not that I will that for other districts to have to
Yeah.
do some of the things
No.
but that I think the sheer amount of challenges that we've been faced with, that is what has really grown us together. And it's not just us, but it's the cabinet that has walked us alongside us to guide us to, you know, voting our values, but I think it's the administration
Yeah.
that has walked alongside us as we've had to navigate some pretty challenging waters.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was like, when are we going to catch a break? But I think, you know, I feel like as a just a system, we can go through something hard, but we know it's not, something else is coming. And
Right.
we get stronger, we grow a lot more just in our trust with one another. But I think it's, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but it's navigating hard waters together and having an administration that's guiding and walking alongside us and
Yeah.
helping us as we make hard decisions.
Yeah.
And so I love our team, but man, we've got some great people in an administration that
Yeah.
really.
But
And
they have the ability to do that job because you all trust them. And the trust starts here, but then you trust them. And so again, that speaks to the relationship between the two, which is key. Yes, sir. Sorry.
When I was answering questions, I was thinking about my colleagues, and then I was thinking about Melinda. And of course, Mike's our deputy, right? So when I ask them questions, I mean, I throw the ego outside. I'm like a sponge. I mean,
Yeah.
These are smart people right here.
Yeah.
And I try to learn from them, just like I try to learn from my colleagues. And I agree with Janet, what she said earlier about how it's changed. Well, this process, interacting with my colleagues has changed me too. I mean, I didn't think about that. See, here she says something, and I've learned something from that. I think, you know what? It's changed me too, and it's made me a better person. Being around these folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I have appreciated is, though you're all uniquely individual and have your own questions and your own stories and perspectives that you bring to it. And so I appreciate that. That makes us better. The questions that you ask make us better. And, you know, I feel like y'all seek to understand those questions. And so it's not that y'all think alike. It's, you know, I don't feel like it's groupthink. I feel like everybody brings their unique perspective. And then when there's a decision made, it's, you know, often, because people have done their homework, they've asked lots of questions, their own questions, from their own perspectives, and then we come to a decision, and then I feel like whatever decisions are, that's where I feel there's unity in the team, so.
Well, I think that, because when you read this, of course, you don't sit there and watch our board meetings online, at least I hope you have a bit bigger life than that. But if you read this, you would assume that we have nothing but 7-0 votes, and the truth is, it's not true.
Yeah.
I would say we have a lot of 7-0 votes on what I call the routine business of the board, that, I mean, it's like, okay, yeah, we're approving this, we don't even know what this vendor, but yep, okay, we're good with this. We've had major issues, though, where we have had, you know, it's not a majority, it's a majority, but it's not a 7-0. And I think one of the things that's been unique is that when we have done that, I've never seen a situation where the board voted a certain way and maybe one or two of us didn't get what we wanted. But it shouldn't be about us, but it is, it's a Tego. But that when the meeting was over, you know, those that were in the majority were criticizing those in the minority, and those in the minority, you know, weren't, and it showed out in public, and we've never done that. And I think the reason for that, when we talk about what you see in different districts and all that, I haven't been here as long as the rest of them. I've been here 21 years now. At least for now. I can't speak for what Belton will become years from now. I think for now, the board represents what our community expects of us. Our community would not accept, you know, us leaving a board meeting, deciding on something with a 4-3 vote, and those three of us that were in the minority going out there into the papers and slamming those other 4 board members and saying, hey, you know, this is wrong. But that is happening in communities. I listened to a school board members calling the other day on an AM radio station in Austin and just destroy each other. And I was like, I cannot imagine speaking that way. And I don't think our community would accept it. So I think for now, at least, this is what the community that we represent, this is what they expect. They don't expect 7-0 votes, but they do expect there'll be respect, and that we will do what we think is right.
That's right.
I would go so far as to say that when we do have a divided vote on occasion, we're kind of glad. As a group, we're kind of glad, because it shows that we don't all think the same, and we're not all in lockstep, and we don't all have to agree, and we can still move forward.
That's right.
I think that's a healthy thing.
It's healthy, and it speaks to your trust level. The fact that you can do that and then walk out of here and it's over. Like, this is the direction we're going. Okay. Speaks to a very high level of trust. It is unique. It is unique.
Yeah, and you know, one of the trust is what keeps me here. You know, I've always said this, that, you know, we've witnessed other boards and, you know, like Jeff just said, you know, people calling in, talking to the media, speaking against the other board members. I cannot and will not be part of a dysfunctional board. So if I ever leave in the middle of a term, that should just speak volumes, that I just won't be part of it. My value system won't allow it. So we have had a couple of different warm bodies in here, but like I said before, the unity message is still there. Regardless of how we may have discussed something in closed session, when we come out of there, we're on one page, on one accord. That's the way it should be.
That's right.
We're focused.
Those are impressive. Have you all done a session at TASB? Have you put in, like, what it takes to be a unified board?
We've done several.
2 or 3.
Three.
Yeah,
We've done 3
Well,
classes.
but on that topic.
No,
Not on that topic.
It's funny because I would say that even though that wasn't the topic,
Yeah.
the way we spoke to what we were doing, what the
It
topic was,
resonated.
represented how we
100%.
worked together every time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's good stuff.
We'll say, looking at the results, that like there's one on here that hurts my heart a little bit.
Okay. Go ahead.
I mean, if we just look at B4, right? Like, it hurts my heart that we have one there in the disagree column. And so, yeah, I don't know. So I would like to say, if I'm at all a part of that, I would love to know about that. Yeah.
I just want to echo that. I mean, I feel jaw dropped. And honestly, I mean, maybe I'm just new and a little bit naive, but I expected these to be a little higher. But hearing your experience, it sounds good. That's just me. But I'd say the same thing that you just said.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think if anything, it just, and I appreciate you saying that, because it just brings an awareness to the whole board that somebody feels that way.
Yeah.
And maybe it will, like, it triggers something in your mind about, I need to be more conscientious about, like, you know, the why behind that, we don't know. But just, I think, being conscious of it, and that's in somebody's mind. But at the level that you all are at, the fact that you all just can talk to each other about things like that, I think that's an opportunity, you know, to share with one another if you think that's happening. Yeah. And you'll see several neutrals in here, and that's not good or bad. It's just neutral. I don't know. We used to have, instead of neutral, we had don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like we felt like that was too much of an out. Like, I don't know if we get along or we don't. So neutrals tends to be a little bit more balanced with the scale, I think. But overall, I mean, like, collectively, this is a very high level trust, like, pretty impressive. So, anyone else want to comment on that before we? This is actually taken from Ken Blanchard. We got to give credit where credit is due. So we used the Trust Works by Ken Blanchard and his model for Team Trust, based on the ABCD model, the ability, believability, connectedness, dependability. All right. So the next 3 slides are really, and again, we're still talking about mindset. This is the 3 essential roles. You have another handout, and I'll ask you to take a look at this, the back page of your agenda. 3 essential roles in an aligned school system. And I just take a moment to review this. Have any of you seen this before? Have any of you seen this model? On the back page of your agenda, you'll see the strategic role, the tactical role, and operational role.
Mhm.
And then you see how the superintendent and administrators cascade down. Take just a minute or 2 to review this, and I'm going to ask you some questions about it. When you look at this model, what stands out for you? What feels comfortable or uncomfortable about the model, or what thoughts do you have about it?
For the most part, I think we do a good job of staying in this model.
Mhm.
I mean, personally, I'm not an education expert.
Yeah.
We've got at least one doctor and one almost doctor in the room. Right? I mean, they're the experts, right? And so, you know, trying to deal, right, in what they are the true experts in, right? That's not my wheelhouse, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think we do a pretty good job actually of executing this model. I don't know if you all think otherwise, just let us know, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'll do an exceptional job with this. And again, you ask good questions, you share perspective, perceptions, and feedback from the community. I feel like like y'all work really hard for it to get to the right person to answer. And I know that's hard. You know, someone comes to you and wants you to fix something specific that they want, and that's difficult because sometimes what someone might want is very much in that operational role. And so I feel like y'all do a really good job of when it feels like it's not governance anymore and it's more in that operational or administrative world. I feel like there's quick recognition of that and then getting that to us. But I also really value y'all's big perspective. I mean, Chris and I have had conversations on the degree to which navigating, managing change as a system is either a challenge for us or, you know, times we do that well. And I valued that perspective because while you might not be the reading expert, you each bring expertise in your role as a board member, and that makes us better. I feel like that makes us better.
I was looking at number 20, and I was chuckling over here because I'm thinking we are so good at making sure that we are aware of our nonverbal cues during public comments. We are just like stone statues when that occurs. We do a great job during that time.
Mm-hmm. You're looking at the signs when you know you've left the strategic role. And this is what good governance is not.
Yeah,
and there's a whole list of them,
it.
so it is interesting.
Would you say in your experience that where you see boards make the mistake on the strategic and then the tactical and the operational is when board members allow themselves, and I think it's harder for newer board members, but can be, and I see really in a small district, I can imagine it's very hard, where they allow themselves to get pulled into the problems, the day-to-day problems by their friends, their colleagues, because you do want to help people.
Yeah.
But I think that's, I mean, in your experience, because you've been doing this a long time, and you were
100%.
superintendent, and so you dealt with board members. Elgin, if you were there then, it was still a pretty small school district, so those people serving on your board had gone through elementary school with everybody else on that board, and everybody who had kids in that school and be like,
That's
well, John called me and said,
Yeah.
this second grade teacher is doing this.
That's right. 100%. And so smaller districts are a different animal altogether because they're related and they grew up together. Like I was the outsider coming in to Elgin, and so I learned quickly, you know, all of those connections. But the superintendent is not the first person they call, nor is it the right person that there's like, if it's a campus issue, it's not the principal they're calling. They're going straight to they're jumping all kinds of levels to get there. One, you know, I asked you all early on, what surprised you the most? Generally, almost every time I ask that of a board, I always hear that they thought that they had a bigger role in being able to make changes. Like they thought that they could help, like complaints that came to me. And so redirecting, having to redirect, that's been the hardest thing. That's one of the things I hear consistently. I didn't hear that today from you all, because I don't think that must not be an
That
issue.
board member got off. Although we love him, he's a great board member, but it still took him a while.
He was one of the best.
But-
Just came in guns blazing.
But you also know, like the newer you are, like it's like the new guy's on. We're going straight to the new person to see if we can, you know. But knowing how to redirect and knowing that that's a system, knowing the protocol, instead of trying to solve the problem, you direct them back to, have you talked to the campus principal? That, you know, solve it at the lowest level. Have you talked to the superintendent? Have you followed the steps? Because at your level, you know, if it is something that escalates and becomes something bigger and even a grievance, you're gonna have to hear it. And so you don't put yourself in any kind of line of solving the problem when you may have to solve it at a higher level. But yes, that's really common in smaller districts. But again, I think it's something like you can learn how to stay in a strategic role. That's teachable and that's learnable. Now, are you willing to do that as a board member? That's what good governance is being able to stay in the strategic role, which can be hard. And that's why we say, how do you know if you've gotten out of the strategic role? Sometimes you may not even realize that you have good intentions and don't even know. And maybe this is a good time to look at that list. It's the last slides that I have, but let's just look at it now. Look at some of these. Let me see, there's one, I don't have my glasses on. There's one in here that talks about not being able to let go of, number 5, being able to, failure to personally detach from a board decision. You already talked about that. Like, y'all are, whether you agree or disagree, you walk out of here and y'all move forward. So, I mean, it's not an issue. Are there any on this list that jump out at you that you go, wait a minute, why is this on this list? I was literally working with a district. We were talking, we were doing the same thing, strategic role, and one of the board members said, well, I don't trust the administration to bring me the information that I want, so I'm gonna do my, like literally said the words, I'm gonna do my own research before the board meeting so that I have questions ready. True statement, true story. But that board member has left the strategic role. When you feel like you can't trust your administration, there are deeper issues with that. So those are things that you have to, and it starts with a team of 8. So if there's trust issues beyond here, then that's a reflection at the top, at the highest level.
I think we did a great job at all of these.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's good. It's an awareness too. Like, am I doing this? The front and back, they're the same thing. Oh, you have it twice. That's just.
It's super important.
It's so important. It is so important that you need to remember this. Do not forget. Let's talk about the 3 roles. I gave you the little airplanes because I think about, when I look at this model, I always think about the airline industry. Where did here it is. Think about the airline industry and the different, it sort of aligns with the types of roles that live within a school district. You have your boots on the ground folks that are doing the work day in and day out for public education. It's your teachers, it's your custodians, food service, it's paras. It's those that are directly interfacing with your customers. In the airline industry, that would be your ticket agents. It's your flight attendants. It's the people that are talking to the people that are receiving the service. The tactical role is, for us, we know it's our campus leaders, it's our department leaders, our principals. In the world of flight, airlines, it's your pilots. They're flying the planes. They're the ones that are executing the work, getting you from point A to point B. At the very highest level, beyond the pilot, you're air traffic control. You guys are watching at the highest level, making sure the planes are going in the right direction and there's not a collision course about to happen. You're making sure that things are very clear so that they know how to execute. They're not grounded on the runway. They're ready to take off and go. So your job is to really set the direction. So when I talk to boards, I say you are air traffic control. You are managing the planes that are in the air. When you step out of air traffic control to go fly the airplane or try to do the job at the very ground level, what happens? If you're leaving your post, what happens?
Front page of the newspaper.
Yeah.
Well, I think to just go with that metaphor, it'd be incredibly confusing to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It causes chaos.
It's chaos, and it could cause a collision course. Now we don't have the direction. Your job is to monitor it. It doesn't mean you just let it go. Okay, we've set the direction, just let them go. No, you're watching. You as a board have a responsibility to keep your eye on what the work is doing, what the leadership team and the superintendent is doing with the work, so that there's this ongoing communication. if there's a problem, you might have a Mayday situation, Mayday, you all aren't just taking a coffee break, you're on, you're watching, and you may have to redirect. You may have to redirect the work or think about how we're doing this differently. Maybe we have to land the airplane to regroup or refuel and rethink about maybe we'd go a different direction. This is think of yourself as air traffic control, and that airplane is to remind you, keep it at your little. You all don't need the reminder. You would be surprised how many people need that reminder. But this is where you're supposed to be, not at the very ground level. Doing the work, not flying the airplane. You all have board operating procedures, assuming you do. And so I would assume that you all live by those board operating procedures because it helps your administration, too, and the team understand what your role is. So executing on board operating procedures. Any questions about that?
I just have a comment.
Yeah.
This conversation makes me think of back the questions earlier about what surprises you. Something that just came to my head of that's really important for us and even our administration of how well we have to be at multitasking, looking at the here and now, but also looking ahead and having to balance those.
Yes.
Because we know that things come up spur of the moment, or just you have to be present of what you're working with at in that moment, that day and time, but also at the same time, always looking ahead. And I just feel like that was something that I'm still making sure that I'm I guess conscious about of are we presently doing what we should be doing, but also preparing for future boards and just for the future of Belton. But and I think that our administration does a great job of that too, just navigating the current waters they're in right now, but I just feel like they also do a great job of the 1 to 2 years out, the 3 to 5 years out. And so that balance that's been kind of surprising to me is you can't just be in the here and now. You've got to always have one eye
forward, looking ahead. The other thing I didn't mention, you'll notice the superintendent straddles between the strategic role and the tactical role, and your administrators, your leadership team straddles between tactical and operational. That really speaks to the flow of communication, because you all can set a direction, but then how does the tactical team know what that direction is if there's not that communication from your superintendent, and then your administrators who are taking in that information, how do they know how to translate that into the work that they're doing? So while you're setting a long-term goal, you've got to have a way to incrementally show progress towards those goals. And that's really what this is. That's what I think you all have a strategic plan in place, but that's what your strategic plan does too. It sets a long-term vision, but how are we communicating our progress towards those goals? In fact, I think that does lead us to the next. I'm going to skip these because we just talked about these. But it's this, with understanding what our role is. There's this model. There's a process. There is a system for how we conduct the work. There's the planning phase. You're part of that as a board. You all are helping to define the goals, to set the direction. You all are hearing from the community. You all know what the needs of this district are, and so that translates into goals. Well, then you move into the do. I saw some of y'all nodding when I said, do you know the Plan, Do, Check, Act? How do you all use this model in Belton?
We have a model that we've not formally adopted at a board meeting, but that we've adopted with district and campus leadership, and it's Plan, Do, Study, Act, so similar. And so it's the cycle of continuous improvement and the model of continuous improvement that we use. And it's, from comprehensive needs assessments to developing improvement plans like we're bringing y'all in August. And then we have system checks along the way. And have been working with them to develop kind of leading measures. And then there's the lag measures that are in their improvement plans. And then it's just this constant cycle of, okay, we're implementing, well, how's it going? By what method do we know? It's going well, and then those tweaks, and then we've built in, and I'd love y'all's perspective, the board workshops per goal to give y'all, okay, here's where we are.
Yeah.
Just even preparing for those workshops is an incredible exercise, because it's like, okay, are we there? How do we know we're there? Well, we're not as far. You know, the accountability of coming to you helps with this, and helps us internally know, okay, we've got work to do, and y'all know when we've got work to do on it, and when we haven't made progress. I do feel like y'all have made it safe to be able to be very transparent about, no, we're not there yet. Here's where we are. Do we know why we're not there yet? I mean, I feel like that's y'all's expectation, is if we're not meeting something, do we know why? And are we knocking down those barriers or putting in what we need to in order to overcome that? You know, and I feel like y'all don't expect people to be perfect, but you expect us to keep moving forward. And I think that's why there is this healthy relationship, is that it hasn't been developed to be fear-based. But there's still accountability. Nobody wants to let you down. Like, if we think we haven't met a target, those are hard behind-the-scenes conversations. And a lot of that is out of respect for this team, because people know how hard you work on behalf of the district, so people don't want to let you down. But you've made it safe. Now, obviously, if we don't ever hit our targets, and that goes on and on and on, you know, safety doesn't mean there wouldn't be a very difficult conversation that would come with that, you know. But you've allowed it to create the conditions in which people aren't, I tease and call it hiding the chocolates. Now I'm showing my age. Lucy and Ethel hid the chocolates, and that, yeah. So we talk about that internally, about we don't want to create a system of fear where people are hiding the chocolates, instead of saying our process is broken or our system is broken and we need to fix it. And so I think that starts with the modeling that y'all bring to it. And I think that doesn't create fear throughout the system, because the work y'all do impacts down to a classroom. If you're that board that you were describing, I've been in systems where you feel it all the way into the classroom. The division and the fighting and the animosity, and that's just, that is so far from what this community expects and what y'all are. So, do y'all care if I turn the air down? Did it get a little hot?
Yeah.
Okay, I think the air shut off.
Yeah.
You feeling some pressure? No.
That was not a hint. But I was like, whoo, it got a little warm.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's noticeable about a year ago, like this started to show up in board meetings, right? Board meetings and workshops and things like that. Like, so
Yeah.
when they bring some of the materials to us, it's actually, they're talking through the 4 cycles,
4 cycles.
right? The 4 pieces of this. So,
Yeah.
and that's relatively new, at least in my time here.
Yeah, and when we say everyone in the system has a role, but everyone is not in every role, I think it's really key that you all are part of the planning, and certainly part of the, you say study, but we call it checking. It's that feedback communication loop that you're reporting back about progress towards goals. That's in the checking place, and that's where conversations happen. And are we on the right track? Do we need to step back or rethink? Do we need to adjust what we're doing? And if so, then that goes back to the tactical team to act. And so the cycle continues. So you're in the planning and then you're in the checking. You're setting the direction, but you're also making sure that you're holding your leadership team accountable for the work that you've charged them to do and what they're saying they're doing. And they're telling you in the do, this is how we're going to do it. You all are the what. This is what we want you to do. And then they say, okay, well, this is how we're going to do it. So that's the plan, do. And then we come back together and we talk about it. And then we regroup. And it's just this constant cycle of improvement, continuous improvement model. It's a good model. It's another Edward Demings.
I just love that. I feel like it's permeating throughout our system. Like, I'm sitting here thinking, we've planned for professional learning.
Yeah.
We planned for that based on feedback from our staff on their perceptions around professional learning and the listening sessions and all of that. So we're in the implementing, we're in that do stage right now. We're gonna assess it. So there's not a professional learning that we're offering that there shouldn't be a survey attached to it so that we can really measure the effectiveness of it. And then we're gonna take action based on what we find out, and that just continues. And so I like that it's not just, okay, we're bringing that to the board level, but administratively we're focused on that, and it doesn't matter the system. I can see this cycle happening. And so for me, it's just this, you know, y'all adopted a value around continuous improvement, and that's a mindset that should be modeled and cultivated across our district and our classrooms. And so I feel like, you know, when you have those champagne moments where you feel like it's starting to happen, is when you're seeing that start to become just habit, and not because someone remembered to pull out the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle and say we're supposed to do it. And I feel like we're developing, we're not there. I'll admit, sorry, we get quality results. I was the one neutral. And I looked at that and wanted, because I'm very hard on myself and feel like it always can get better, it always can get better. But I felt like, yeah, we are getting a lot of quality results, but there's a lot of results we want to get better. And so that's why I maybe I misunderstood it when I did, filled it out, but that was me on we get quality results, because I was like, in some cases, absolutely, but we know we can be better, and we want to keep getting better.
I think the reality is we're never going to be there, right? Wherever there is, right? But like in what we do, there's always room for improvement, right? So.
Yeah. That's why we after action everything, probably ad nauseum. I don't know that everybody loves it all the time, but it's like even when things go exceptionally well and we're really proud of it, we do an after action because there's always something we could tweak and just do a little bit better. And so I think that's just important for us to stay in that continuous improvement mindset.
The whole return on investment comment earlier, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're trying to turn.
That's right. And you all are hugely important in the planning piece. That's the direction setting. That is providing that clarity on what it is that the administration is charged to do, and it is your goals. One thing that curious to know with you guys, one thing I do hear from boards when we talk about, because again, you're evaluated based on the goals that are set by the board, and oftentimes we hear, well, we do a real good job of, we've got these goals, but we don't really have a good way to measure it on the back end. How do you all, how does that strike you? How does that work here? Does it feel right? Are we looking at it from a measurable, every goal should be measurable, which is hard to do. It's hard to do. Sometimes it's quantifiable measurements. Sometimes it's qualitative. Sometimes it's not as easy to put your finger on.
Sorry, this
You
just
wanna
sounds like
say something?
no. This just sounds like a Chris question. So I'm just,
I agree.
yeah.
Hit it, man.
Well, our key progress measures
Yeah.
tell us exactly on some things, percentage-wise, number-wise, all of that. So some of it we can truly track and know if we're meeting expectations.
Yeah.
And then other things I know that, whether it's like employees or job satisfaction, I know that there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work with HR on that, and interviews,
Yeah.
surveys.
Right, qualitative, but there's a way to measure it, and then those results get translated back to the board to be able to evaluate based on.
We've
those
not
goals.
had an evaluation yet, so
Well, that's another thing y'all can talk
that's
about.
that'll be on the horizon.
Yeah.
But I would say, I feel like we've gotten infinitely better in the 6 years that I've been here.
Yeah.
Right? And not only knowing in advance how we think we're going to know if we got the result we want, we're thinking in advance about how we're going to measure that, right? But then actually doing the measurement and then actually being transparent about that measurement.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, when we talk about some of the academic progress we've made recently, right? Some of those have been difficult conversations, right?
Yeah.
we hit below the line, right? Where our target was, right? And, but we're seeing that, and we're having those conversations now where we didn't have those conversations 6 years ago. So, I mean, we'll absolutely, I think, moving in the direction and making great improvements and executing this, and we'll continue to get better.
We're governing better.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree with what Janet said, though, the KPMs, that was, kind of brought in here by Aaron's predecessor. Rosie mentioned in a meeting one time that, we get to the end of a year, you give us the report, this looks good, this looks bad, okay, the next 12 months we'll do this again.
Right.
And it's been over the last several years that they put in the key progress measures that, we monitor. They give us updates now. We know. We don't have to ask for them, and we do ask for updates on some things.
Yeah.
But on our big checklist, we're constantly getting them in the board meetings.
Yep.
So everybody in public can see them, good, bad, or indifferent. And, if things are going the way they're supposed to, the end result for us shouldn't really matter that much because the process was there. We already should know what it was. Now, we were thrown for a curve this year, not that Belton ISD did, because other boards have said the same thing, that the key progress measures we were given by the state on the STAR test turned out to be false. And it's like, well, you did really great on all the tests, up until the real test, and then we made sure that you didn't do well on that. But I think that as a board, and I think for the community, I know they don't really pay that much attention to the details, and maybe they shouldn't, maybe that's why we're here.
Yeah.
But those things are not sent to us in private emails about, KPM on third grade math is not looking good. No, it's brought to us in a meeting, everybody
That's great.
sees it,
Yeah.
and nobody can say, well, we didn't know that third grade math wasn't doing well. Really? Because we've been very public about it. This is what and when they show up with the KPM, I've always appreciated that Gabby or whoever is doing it, typically Gabby, but comes in and says, okay, we're doing well here, here's why we think this, we're not doing well here, here's why we think we're not doing well, we're gonna change. And
That's what we're gonna do.
I don't think the admin has ever felt pressured when Suzanne asks a question about, I don't think that they get apprehensive, like, oh man, they asked a question.
Yeah.
I think they're very,
Yeah.
very open about it.
What I appreciate, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking about Chris and his very first time on the board. Chris came in asking pretty much the same questions almost every board meeting. How do we measure that? How's it quantified? How do we measure that? He listens to the reports, that's great, but how are we keeping track of that? How are we measuring that? And that you've been consistent. Haven't heard you ask that in a long time.
Haven't had to. We're measuring stuff.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
It also caused a lot of trouble.
That's right. Pretty cool.
Well, but what I've also appreciated is a lot of the measures that you traditionally see in a board meeting are those lag measures. There's nothing you can do about it. It already happened.
Yeah.
It already happened.
Yeah.
And what I have seen uniquely here and not in other districts is that some of our key progress measures are leading, they are leading measures, like onboarding. You trusted us that because of our data and our listening sessions that are new to profession, new teachers, we're saying, we're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
The meetings at the beginning of the year are not,
Yes.
they're not doing it for us. And so we were able to put in a key progress measure that was a process measure
Yeah.
around developing onboarding plans.
Yep.
We can measure, I can prove to you that all leaders did it.
Yeah.
But doing it one time doesn't make it effective, and so we did it. We now know what onboarding is. We spent a lot of time on that. Now this year, it's okay. So we did empathy interviews, staff, how did it work for you?
Mm-hmm.
What worked, what didn't work? And now we're in a whole nother layer now of, we're still doing onboarding, but now we're checking them and getting feedback on,
good.
you're 30 days in,
Yeah.
you're still here, that's awesome. But are
It's
we
always
getting you
questionable.
what you need,
Yeah.
And so I have appreciated the
Yeah.
balance of some of those leading measures as well as the lag measures.
That's
So,
That's good stuff.
Champagne moment.
Champagne moment. Not a champagne problem.
Yes. Not advocating for champagne.
Yeah.
At all.
It has its place. All right, we're still talking about mindset, strategic alignment of systems. And this is one of your, you have a model, and it looks like that on the right. That's harder to see than the one in front of you. But I think what's really, and we've been talking about, is really making sure if our systems align, we get better at executing our work. And so just taking a look at this model, think about the arrows. What do you think they represent? And then what stage, if we were talking about Belton ISD, what stage would you think that the organization as a whole is in? And why do you think you're in that stage?
Some things are in two, because some things we just started.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Yeah, I'm still on number two, just thinking that we're improving, we're working to improve. Yeah, I'm number two.
My gut was 2.5.
Well,
2.5, but you know, right? Because if you look at the whole system, right? There's places where I think we're 3+ maybe approaching 4. There's other places where, you know, we're more like a 2, and we're still maturing. Like, I mean, if you look at the whole thing, you know, we've got pockets.
Yeah.
And those pockets, we're starting to get smaller, and
That's right.
starting to get things aligned and going in the right direction, or same direction.
Where do you
right?
think we're in the
focus
4?
direction? I don't know that we're completely 4.
Okay.
Right?
You said
There
3.5.
may be some 3+.
Yeah.
Right? But, you know, 4, I don't know that we're 4.
Yeah.
Four is hard to get to, and
Yeah.
4 is hard to
Hard to
stay in,
sustain.
because
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
always a change in people, and that may have to change what your process is. So that's hard. It's hard to
Yeah.
reach, but it's hard to certainly stay there. I'm sorry to cut you
No,
off.
I'm thinking of a specific instance, you know, I think it was our last board workshop with Gabby about, you know, because STAR changed the rules of the
Mhm.
game
Yep.
again
Yep.
with how they're testing and grading. And so when that all came out, I think everybody in the state was in stage
Stage 1.
And
That's right.
I feel like based on kind of this last workshop we had, I feel like we're kind of closer into this stage 3 where they've really developed some systematic approaches, and it's becoming more aligned.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm hopeful that they will get to, you know, as far as the instructional approach with the new STAR testing and
Yep.
criteria, and until they change all the rules again.
That
and
is
then we'll
a
be back in stage
great
1.
example. Yeah. That's a great example, and external forces can send an organization into chaos. Every time the legislature meets, you all have seen our Texas Education Code, and they just add to it and add to it, and so it does cause a little bit of, you know, turmoil, but getting back into, depending on how strong you are as a system, you know, like redeveloping systems or tweaking systems that you already have. Some do it better than others because you already have good systems in place. You'll notice that from stage 1 to stage 2, you see some greater efficiencies happen. You lose a couple of arrows when you move. You start to see the organization starting to carrying out some things consistently, so become more efficient. I was working with the district, and by the way, yeah, and I loved, somebody said it, you know, there's certain areas where we're a solid 3, maybe a 3+, but there's some areas where we may be a 2. I was working with the district, and there was it was a smaller district, but a new person had come into the HR department, and she was already flustered to be in this workshop with us, but she said, I'm in stage 1 because we have 0 protocols and systems, and this is HR. This is about employees. So when there was a grievance, they didn't really have good processes to define how to do that work. So she was trying to create manuals at the same time, like flying the airplane and building it at the same time, which is very hard to do. But she said, I am in stage one, where other departments didn't even realize that she was struggling because she hadn't had time to come up for air. I think it's important to also recognize that the system is a whole, and so you're only strong as your weakest link. If somebody is out of kilter within their department, it's affecting other parts of your organization. So we've got to be really clear about how is what one department doing affecting and impacting our ability to keep moving forward efficiently. Any thoughts? Other thoughts? Other thoughts?
Stage one is what my family looks like when we ask them where to eat dinner. where do you want to go eat dinner?
Can I say amen?
Oh, that's awesome. But I'll tell you what, I'm sitting here thinking about the degree to which some of our processes are now articulated in writing. They're not in someone's head. And, you know, which when you're a growing system, that can happen.
Yeah.
Someone leaves and the process left with them because it was their process. And so, you know, I'm really seeing systems being documented, and, you know, we've talked about once it's documented, then next time something happens or whatever, you have now something to go back and say, okay, where within the system did we have a breakdown, kind of to your original Deming part?
Yeah.
Because often it's in the system, it's not you know, sometimes it can be a person error, but often it's a system error. And we realize, okay, where in our system do we have something broken? And so I feel like we're developing more and more of those archived systems.
Yeah.
So.
And these are, you just led right into this. I don't know how you knew we were going here, but this is really your tactical team, making sure that they have systems for how we do these things. But as a board, these are things from a strategic lens that you should be aware of. Do you hear these things being talked about? Do you see this framework manifested in the work that the leadership team is doing? And this is a quick slide, but this is, again, do you have systems for how we measure progress? Do we have systems for how we align our work? Do we have systems for how we collect data, how we present data? Do we have systems for safety and security, translating data into knowledge? Do we have systems for how we monitor our reputation? You mentioned dealing with a lot of difficult situations. Do you have systems for how you systematically deal with those things? At the tactical level, they're the ones generally executing the work associated with these things. Again, you all have that higher level view of oversight that these things are happening. You hear it in the work. Thoughts about that? You led right into that, Linda.
I think that, oh, sorry,
No, go ahead.
that one on rapid shifts, I think that's one is ensuring that we have an agile system where we can do that. And so we've tried to do a lot of work of aligning calendars, and sometimes the calendar acts as a barrier to that, but we acknowledge that, and I think have been talking a lot about how do we become agile when if it's the night before and we need to get to the Southwest because we went to the wire on construction, we got to be agile enough to get in there and get the furniture in so kids have what they need and teachers have what they need. You know, we've been talking a lot about that, and then we do this, it's called RACI. So trying to really talk about, so who's really responsible, accountable, who needs to be consulted and informed. Because sometimes when we're not as agile, I think we've realized there wasn't role clarity. Whose really was it to own and move forward? And so those are just some of the things that we're working on.
You get there by making making those plan, do, check, act cycles shorter, right? Continuing to break it down into smaller pieces and making that cycle time faster.
Good.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were headed to the next one. I
No, that was
interrupted you.
great, I appreciate it. You have to be able to execute the work, and one of the most important tools, and you all have a strategic plan. There's a different way of looking at it, some people call it a balanced scorecard, some call it a strategic plan, some call it a performance management framework, but it is your long-term plan. It is looking further out. Where do we want to be 3 to 5 years from now? And while these may look different in form, they should have some pretty similar components. You all are setting the priorities, strategic priorities, the objectives and goals. That is 100% the role of the board. But part of that execution should include what are the action strategies that the tactical team is working on? What are those lead measures? You mentioned lag measures and lead measures. And then if you look to the right of that examples of quality performance tools, this is most often this lives with the tactical team, your leadership team, your superintendent and senior leaders, using some of these performance tools to really understand where we need to go and what we need to do to get there. It's that ongoing, it's that feedback loop and communication loop. Melinda, I don't know if you want to speak to any of that. I think
I like going down the list on the right-hand side. I don't feel I have data to support it.
Yeah.
That we have processes for listening, listening to the perspective of students and staff. We have surveys, engagement surveys for parents, students, and staff, and that's part of our comprehensive needs assessment, really looking at those and pulling out where do we need some attention and work. Mike and I just left this afternoon a root cause analysis meeting. A team's been digging deeply into accountability data and really seeking to understand, really using tools to get to root cause analysis in some areas better than I've seen them do in 4 years. I feel like we're getting down to some system things that we really are going to be working on and have started working on. So, we do start, stop, continue. SWOT analysis are very common. That's a strategy we use when we're looking at any data. Where are we strong? Where are we weak? Opportunities and threats. Threats is an interesting one because that tends to focus around the things outside of our control. And that's been Texas school funding seems to be that big one that's on a lot of our minds. And so, not saying we're perfect at this, but I feel like we've put regular routines around a lot of the things on that right-hand side.
We're starting to see a lot of district boards, the strategic roundtables. We're starting to see more collaboration. Again, staying within the roles, strategic role, tactical role, but we're starting to see more senior leader teams and boards coming together like this in a workshop and talking about the work, or really talking about strategic goals and objectives. That start, stop, continue, stop, start, continue. Having that conversation as part of the roundtable, because you all also are responsible for the budget. And how do you balance our budgeting and our funding with what we want to start doing and continue doing? Well, there's only so much money, so what are we going to stop doing if we want to start something new, or if we want to give raises? That was a big conversation this year. If we want to give raises and we're not getting any more money and we're not growing, there's a lot of districts that aren't growing. If you're growing, well, you've got money coming in. But that's not necessarily enough to do what you want to do, right? So what are you going to stop doing in order to give raises? Otherwise, you get into this vicious cycle of, you can pass a deficit budget so many years before that's just not sustainable after time. So that is a legislative thing. We are going to do a SWOT analysis together, and I think Any questions about this before I get off of it? I think we've already talked about the next slides. Checklist why individuals may leave their strategic role. We've talked about some of this. They take what they know from their own work experience and try to apply it, or try to solve, I'm getting out of the air traffic control, I'm gonna go fly the airplane because I know I can help. Sometimes it's easier to try to get into the tactics versus than just think strategically, so it's easier. Maybe it's quicker. Let me just do this. I know better. Let me just do it. Or we just simply don't know the right questions to ask our team. I don't sense that is a problem with this group, based on everything I'm learning about you all and
I'll
what I've
admit,
seen.
I'm still there, not knowing the right questions to ask.
Uh-huh. Do you want to share more about that?
Yeah, I think it's just experience, and
Yeah.
after a year, I just, have a little bit better idea. But it's great being with this team.
Yeah.
Well, putting it all together, but these 6 board members to glean quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'll say I'm kind of similar to that boat, because when I first got on, I didn't either. And 3.5 years in, I wouldn't say that I'm better at it. I'm not where I want to be, but I've learned what kinds of questions based on the things that I hear these guys,
Uh-huh.
you all ask, and it prompts me to ask something similar the next time. But I've learned to ask more questions just from each other,
Yeah.
because I felt like I had to, early on, that I needed to have
Yeah.
the perfect question,
Yeah.
just so that I could join in on the conversation. But I knew early on that humility of, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I need to just listen. I just need to
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah.
And as time progresses, I feel like I've gotten better because of you all and what you're
Yeah.
asking.
I will say you're
And
asking.
I appreciate that.
I was gonna say 11 years in, I'm still working on that, still
Yeah.
trying to, what's the right question?
Yeah.
Listening to you guys, that teaches me a lot too. 11 years or not, you're still learning.
I think some of it goes back to the fact that we have great trust in our superintendent and cabinet to do a great job, and so I do just listen a lot. I'm not coming in with a bunch of questions just yet. They do an excellent job. It's not our duty to get in the weeds at all.
Right.
That makes it much more complex for everybody.
I would say that the evolution of this board and our leadership in Belton ISD has changed in such a way that this board is encouraged to ask thoughtful questions and to be a part of the process, and it's not always been the case. And so
Yeah.
when I first came on, that was not the case, and so didn't really think you were supposed to ask questions. But
Yeah.
now it's okay. It's like we were talking about. It's a safe place to do it. It's also
Yeah.
a safe place for us.
Oh.
So.
Yeah.
And y'all make it safe to where if we don't know the answer, it's
Yeah.
okay to not know the answer, that we can get that to you. And so it's made it to where it's not intimidating for you to ask questions, because if we don't know it, we don't know it, and we're not gonna make it up. And you make it okay for us if we have to get back to you on a response. I think that's important. Chris, were you gonna say something?
Oh,
Oh, no? Okay.
Sorry.
I mean, I did, but it's not for the group.
Okay.
As you all talk about asking, like, how to ask the question correctly, we give an example. It's a really basic example, but it's the difference between asking. You just painted a building, and it's the difference between saying, why did we paint that? Why did we paint the gym red? Versus, what was the process that we used to pick the paint colors? That's different. You're looking at what is our process for, or what is the system that we have, versus why did you do it this way? And then getting that, when you talk about getting into the weeds, that's getting into the weeds of things.
I mean, what I think is great about this group, right, is the questions that get asked are asked for like true curiosity, true
Yeah.
knowledge. Like there's no gotcha questions that are
Right.
happening, right?
Right.
And that's the spirit of all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that speaks to trust. Again, like no hidden agendas, doing this for the right reason, really want to understand what it is that we're doing and how you can support the work. That's how you can better support the work of your leadership team, is when you have clarity and understanding about what they're doing.
I wanted
We
to
talked about some of these. Go
Share
ahead.
one quick little thing. When I first got on the board, the process was review the packet over, Friday and Saturday, and get whatever questions you have to, the president by Sunday, so that could, so that person could then in turn those questions into administration, so that they would already have the answer for you in board meeting. So that really turned out to be a huge lift for me, because it's like, oh wait, I may not have had time to review the packet right then, or the question didn't come to me on Sunday. So I like this new way. We get it, the questions, we'll ask them during the morning.
And
No
when you're a
pressure.
new board member, you come into it not knowing any different. Your paradigm is what you're told the paradigm is.
Yep.
So it takes change with board and leadership and things for you to start going, wait, there's other ways? Oh.
Yeah, and did any of y'all ever think, well, if I ask this question, the entire community is going to think I'm stupid. I should not ask this question because it does not sound relevant, and somebody will judge me based on this question. Maybe that's just me.
And
Maybe
most of
that's
the
not
time,
me.
someone
That's
else
just
is thinking the same thing and wants to ask that same question. So ask the questions. There are no dumb questions ever. All right, let's see. Another quote, just because I like them. Visions without systems thinking. We're talking about systems thinking a lot, and we started there in the systems thinking approach and the importance of it. If you don't execute on your vision, then what is I have a colleague, I wrote it down because I can't ever remember it. He's do y'all know Lloyd Graham? He's a great guy. He works with us. He says conception, he summarizes this because this is a lot of words. Conception without execution is hallucination. That's his version of this, which is pretty good. I do want us to take a minute. This is our team, and you got those handouts, and we don't need to. Oh, what? You got those handouts, and that's our team. But we're not done, because I want to take a minute. I said we were going to do a SWOT analysis. We do this anytime, and you're not new to Belton. You've been here 4 years, but you're new in the role that you're in. And so I think perspective is important, or perceptions. And so when we talk about, you all have done a SWOT analysis, I'm sure. Maybe you've done it through your strategic planning. But just for your benefit, Dr. Golden, knowing what your board thinks are the strengths of this district, the weaknesses, what are some opportunities maybe that could stem from those weaknesses? What are things that we need to be thinking about differently? And what are some threats? You know, you talked about most of the time threats are external, or may impact us. That they come from the outside in, and they're beyond our control. There may be some internal threats too that we've got to keep our eye on to make sure that that it doesn't have an impact on the organization. You all have a very strong working team of 8, leadership team. You all are moving in the right direction, and how do you sustain that? It's really understanding what some of the perceptions are. Maybe you hear from the community. Maybe you have some thoughts on your, personally about it. I'm going to ask each one of you. We'll just go around the room. 1 or 2. One, top strength. Let's just, we'll start with strength, weakness, opportunity, threat.
Just broadly.
Just broadly. When I say Belton ISD, what do you believe to be the greatest strength of Belton ISD?
I think it's beloved. I think it's very much honored in our community.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's common.
Mm-hmm.
I think our community holds the ISD very highly.
I think transparency is a strength for the
Love that.
ISD. A lot of folks won't agree with that statement, but I personally believe that we are very transparent.
That's outstanding.
I was just gonna say community centered.
got
We're
mine.
just, I mean,
Exactly.
I know we're growing, but there's just
Sense of
still
community.
this small town, we just, it's
Close.
community.
Mm-hmm. You were going to say community?
She took
I put
mine.
3 marks by
Yeah.
that.
Janet's
That's
too.
okay. That's
Because I think that even if teachers aren't from here, like they sense it, they feel it when they come here. I feel like our last 2 two superintendents who weren't from here have come and been like, wow, I really like this community. Like, you feel it when you come here, and that's a strength that we have.
Yeah. Community. Chris?
I gotta come up with a different one now, so. Strengths, I think we made a lot of positive people moves. I think we've got a lot of really strong people in places to really make an impact.
Got the right people on,
Yeah,
on
and-
the right seat on the bus.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Daniel?
The strength of the district,
Mm-hmm.
I think the overall cohesiveness, the unity. You know, there's pockets here and there, of course, like any other organization, but we're a team. I think most people know their roles, right?
Any other strengths that you all would want Dr. Golden to take note of? How about weaknesses? If I were to say, and I hate using the term weakness, but it goes with SWOT, but I think of it in terms of challenges. What are some challenges facing?
It's our revenue. It's not very diverse. We don't have industry. We don't have federal funds like they do in Belton ISD.
Yeah.
And so it's very burdensome on our
Yeah.
homeowners when we pass bonds.
Lots of rooftops.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a day and time when public school is being, you know, berated and all kinds of narratives are being told about
Yeah.
it, the challenge is, how do you get the message out that that's not correct? And how do you make sure that the public knows what is true and
Yeah.
what is going on and all the positive things? And so that's been one of our challenges here, is making sure we get ahead of a message like that so that people don't believe things, false narratives. They get what's really wonderful, and then they don't go to Belton City Watch Facebook page and spread a bunch of lies that they heard through that narrative because
Yeah.
we haven't told the true story.
Yeah. That's great.
You know what Janet's saying, that narrative has just a lot of tentacles on it, you know? It just gets massive, and it has a lot of other collateral, it causes a lot of the collateral damage. That's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say storytelling, so.
Yeah.
It's that confirmation bias.
Oh, confirmation bias.
Yeah. You got the public out there that they can look at 100 pieces of evidence that show that public schools is not what they say it is, and then they'll pick one that says, oh, it is bad, this is why. They just look for the stuff that supports their illusion.
See what you believe.
Yeah.
I don't believe what you see.
What else?
I think for me, I think it's internal, and I think it's external, is complacency. I think it creeps into every good organization if you're not careful. And what I mean internally is we have some struggling campuses that are working hard to get to where they need to be. We also have some campuses that, quite frankly, could almost go on cruise control for a while because they do perform at such a high level. And I think when that happens, you end up with complacency in the classroom, in management. I mean, it happens in every sports team, everywhere you go. If you have success, you will have complacency. So that's what I mean internally, and I think it's just a problem. I couldn't even point to and say, well, see, here's where, no, it's just, I know that's human nature. And then also to touch on what they said, we have a lot of complacency in our community. They've been blessed with this great school system for so long that they're not willing to stand up and fight for the school system sometimes. They're like, well, it's great in Belton, and it's always going to be that way, right?
Yeah.
No, I can drive you 30 miles in any direction and show you where it's not.
Yeah.
But it's been so good for so long here that, and I'm talking about the complainers. Every district has people who don't like where they're at.
Yep.
I'm talking about the majority. I'd say that 85 to 90% of our parents in our community that are just like, oh, everything's fine. We don't need to worry about all these rumors we hear about cutting of school funding, and no, it'll never happen here. Belton's just a great place. It is right now,
Yeah.
but it won't stay that way if you don't stand up and fight for it.
100%. Yeah.
Can I say one more thing on behalf of my former board member and friend Ty Taggart? I'm going to kind of channel him.
Channel Ty.
She wants to meet Ty by this point. Y'all know that, right?
Get the finger going.
Well,
Somebody text Ty, get him here.
there are a lot of teachers, and it's not just our district, it's just a modern problem of discipline with children, and they are frustrated, and a lot of people are leaving that profession because they don't know what to do, and they don't necessarily feel like they have the tools or the resources to handle it, because we have a different generation of students, we have a different generation of parenting. We've gone through a lot of cultural changes in the world, and I think it's a serious challenge. It's one we can't just ignore, because Ty would say they're all gonna quit. So.
That's great.
I want to agree, just add on to that, because really thinking of challenges, teachers just keep coming to my mind. And I know we don't purposefully put so much work and burdensome and mandates, but our teachers have to handle and deal with a lot. And so just the challenge of how do we make sure that we're creating a place for them to thrive and be able to share the load with each other, or go to the people that can help, and just so that they aren't quitting, because they are dealing with students and discipline and cell phones and parents and gosh, just instruction and what all it brings.
Yep.
Our teachers just carry a massive load, and my heart just in this SWOT, the challenge, I feel burdened for our teachers. And I know that we're not doing anything intentional to put more on them, but there is a lot on their plate, and just making sure that as a system, as a district, that we're just making sure that they can thrive and love teaching and do what they wanted to do.
Yep. 100%. Anyone else? Weaknesses? Maybe everybody? Opportunities. When you think about those weaknesses, are there any opportunities that might evolve out of those?
You know, if we take the bull by the horns and start doing something about discipline, I mean, that'll spread. Because if I'm a teacher and I know that the administration and the board supports and backs me, then I'm gonna be willing to come here more so than I would somewhere else. Because I wanna have some peace in my classroom.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been a teacher, you understand, but I mean, that's the way that I would look at it. You want some peace, you know. You don't want to deal with all this other stuff. And Janet mentioned cell phones. I mean, we have to deal with the cell phone, and districts are dealing with that. Those are significant challenges.
Yeah.
Significant cultural challenges. I'm not talking about culture within the district. I'm talking about dealing with the society's views on that.
I think we have an opportunity to tell our story better, louder, more visibly, more creatively, to the people and to the people who don't have kids here, right? To the community members who don't get to see what comes home.
Yeah. And those are the ones that generally vote, the ones that don't have kids in the school system, and you depend on them to keep things thriving and surviving here.
Yeah, an opportunity to show other districts that we've made a change with discipline and it works. I don't know what the answer is, right? But we got to do something about it.
Yeah. It's a familiar theme, common theme. It's not just here.
I know, but what are districts doing? You know, we can talk about it all day long. It's time to act.
It may also speak to advocacy too, because there have been some bills and legislation that prevents you from doing some things now. You know, they've taken away some of the tools.
Oh, yeah, we've seen that recently
Mhm.
in action.
Yeah. Other opportunities?
We've got a massive opportunity to use the data we're collecting now.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I mean, we've, at least at the board level, we've seen more data than we've ever seen, like, over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and so to actually really like do something, data-driven around whatever the changes that needs to be made, or improvement, or enhancement, or furthering of whatever it is.
Yeah, what did your slide say? Gather data to gain knowledge and take action.
Data informed.
Isn't that what you're,
Yeah.
I think is what that, I
Yep.
saw up there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
I think we have the opportunity, and I think we started to do it, is to, education is changing. It's not, some of us are older than others, but it is not the same K through 12 that we went through,
Right.
which is normal because college today is not what it was when I went to college. And I think that understanding that helps, but I think that we have an opportunity in Belton ISD, and we've started to do it to create opportunities for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
To realize that some of our kids are going to go to a 2-year or 4-year college situation. Some of our kids are going to go to the military. Some of them are going to go into trade. Some of them are going to go into the IT field directly from, and I think we have the opportunity, working with outside partners and having a vision of what we think is coming, because it's all only what we think, but to tailor our education to that, and we've started to do that. We've, just in the time that I've been on the board, I don't know how many more programs that we've started and they filled up and they have kids, and then to maybe look at some other programs that they don't need to be around anymore because, quite frankly, there's nothing there for them anymore. It's dead. It's going away, and I think that education is changing in such a way that those that succeed, the districts that succeed, will succeed because they give kids the opportunity to look at everything and say, this is the direction I want to go. Okay, well, we'll give you that. I think we call them pathways, but we'll give you that pathway.
Yeah.
Here it is. And it's funny because that was actually what education was 50, 60 years ago when people had to take their little assessment test. And now then it was a bad thing because they railroaded you into welding or something. But now we're seeing, hey, it was happening. But now we're seeing that, when these kids realize, I don't want to go to college, but I do want to own an automotive, tech station someday. That is my dream, is to do that. Okay, here.
Yeah.
We'll give you that. And that's where public education is so much better than the private sector. Because we do offer all these things. And it's just getting our kids to see that it's there.
Yeah.
And getting their parents to see that it's there. That it's not, hey, it's history, math, da da da. No, it's hey, what do you want to do? If you want to go to college, great. Here's in what college do you want to go to? What do you want to major in, so that they can figure that out. I think it's a great opportunity because I think, like I said, it's changing. We realize, and I think the districts that are going to be left behind are the ones who say, no, we've done it this way for 20 years. This is the way we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
That's not right. We don't do anything that way anymore.
Jeff's right. The curveball is the change, and we gotta get ahead of the curveball.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's going to eat us up.
Yeah. And you do have to be intentional about the stop, start, continue mindset, and where are we going to put our resources? Resource allocation, it's limited, but what are the best things that we can direct that funding source to? What do we need to stop doing?
Yeah.
That's it. Threats? What about threats?
I'm going to go with what he said, which was, what was it
Funding?
Yeah, I'm
Funding.
going to say funding is the
Yeah.
biggest threat that
Right.
we face right now,
Right.
and it's a cliff, and it's not just Belton ISD,
No.
it's across the
100%.
state.
It's a means to an end, though, isn't it, Jeff?
It is.
I mean, pull the funding, let them fail.
Yep.
Mhm.
Change the tests.
I told you so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, some of you attended the school finance session Moat Casey conducted at SLI, and you might remember Buck asking the question, how many districts are passing a deficit budget? And about 80%, the majority of the hands in the room went up. And then, the nenext question was, how many are giving raises? And we talked about that earlier, but that's not sustainable long-term. So what are we gonna do? Because right now, where that lives is at the legislative level. They've got the purse strings, and they can make decisions. It's not that they don't have the money. It's not they're not able, it's just they don't have the will to do it. What else is a threat?
Well, it's something a little bit more broadly than the funding, but just the fact that politics is being pushed into the public school system is, I mean, it just, whether it's testing or funding or, lots of issues, right? I think we can all go there, but depending on where you are, it pits you against one side, against each other. And so it's just infiltrated. And I just think that it's really kind of gotten ugly.
Which is why we've seen such division on boards, because it has become partisan. It has become a political animal, and where do you live, left, right? That's never been an issue. It's always been about kids in education, and then it's turned into something that's become very divisive.
I think
in our
I
system.
think the thing that we have to be careful of is that if we become political, we become political positions. Like I think Rucker and I were talking one day, if he has just this wonderful idea, and he's a Democrat and I'm a Republican, and he's got this great idea that it's going to just be innovative for BISD, and it's going to make positive changes, but I said, I'm not going to vote for that because he's a Democrat.
Yeah.
So we lose sight.
Yeah,
We lose sight
100%.
of what we're here to do.
Yeah.
That's what politics does.
Yeah. There was actually a bill last session to try to, it didn't pass, but to make board positions
Political.
partisan,
Yeah.
To have to put an R or a D
Yeah.
when you run.
Yep.
What good is that, to your point?
And some districts have already done it, not
Wow. Just informally.
on the ballot,
Yeah, right.
but,
They make it
you
clear
know,
when
up in
they're
the, the DFW area,
Yeah, de
there's a
facto way.
handful of those districts that, hey, you know,
Yeah.
hey, I'm a Republican, the Republican Party is backing me for this spot
That's right.
against, you know, this way out leftist, and it goes to what, you know, Manuel said, at the state level, you know, we know those people, some are friends or acquaintances, but they'll flat out tell you, what he said is true, that
Yeah.
somebody can bring the greatest bill, but if you're with the wrong party, it's like, man, I appreciate it, but I'm not voting for that, and you never thought that a school district would do that. It would just be, hey, this is really gonna work for our kids.
Yeah, it's about kids.
I don't care
Yeah,
about your politics in it, this is gonna work for our kids.
that's right.
But, and we're seeing it though, I mean,
Yeah.
these dysfunctional boards that exist right now, the ones that make the news, there's no other way to put it, the ones that
Yeah.
are on the news and that are calling radio stations, you listen to them and you're like, I wouldn't serve with that group of people
Yeah.
for anything.
Right,
So why would I put my kids in that school system?
right.
I'd add a threat of, and it's kind of tied to this, is not losing sight of trying to look for innovative practices in a budget shortfall climate. You know, I think it's hard to
Success with less.
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
innovatively, but I think that's something we can't lose sight of, is there might actually be some innovations that will help us with some budget reductions. And
Yeah.
so
No, she
I
does
think
that.
just
Cool. She's not even
keeping an
doing it.
innovation mindset too during challenging times.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Anything else on threats?
Sorry, I'm compiling a list over here. Sorry.
Everybody.
It sounds a little bit like
We're
that.
leaving it
Why
in,
does that sound
Chris.
like
Everyone said you can talk.
Yes.
Just doing nothing, right, or not responding to the criticism that's out there, or complacency
Yeah.
that Jeff was talking about. Lack of consistency, losing focus,
Yeah.
the things that we really need to be focused on. Yeah.
All right.
That didn't sound like a list.
Well, I shortened it down.
Turn it down. All right. How How does that help you? What are your thoughts, Melinda, about the list that you've gathered?
No, I think being able to hear that collectively as a body of a board is super important. You know, I think y'all do a great job of sharing with me both the strengths and challenges. It's not just challenges that you might hear, you know, a comment that's made to you or something, but that you also share the things that are going well, and I appreciate that. So I don't feel like there's anything you've shared here that is a surprise. I don't think it was surprising at all.
All right, well, let's wrap this up. What do you say?
Go team.
Get you out early. I'm going to ask for one final thought or reflection from everybody. We'll just do a quick round table, and that'll be your exit ticket. But anything you learned tonight or you heard that resonated, that or anything that makes you proud, whatever, from tonight's session.
I feel like it was said a couple times. I think Aaron said it first, which is the amount of trust we have in the leadership with Dr. Golden and the cabinet.
Yeah.
It really makes our job easier.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it easy, but I'm saying it makes it easier.
That level of trust that we have allows us to be courageous in what we have to do. And when we've had to face extreme challenges, public challenges, whatever it is, we know we have each other's back, even if we don't necessarily agree. We have each other's back personally because we care for each other as a team. And that's been, I mean, I think that's one of the things, like when we go to SLI and, you know, the conference groups, and we see boards that don't do that, we can't understand why they would not want to care for each other and not want to be a team. That's a hard way to live.
I think for me, it's just confirmation that you've given us, but it's confirmation of something that we already knew, which, because you do see other boards, and we do see what's going on, but for me, it was just confirmation of, you know, it is a special board. It is.
100%.
Probably the same, just worded differently, but I believe we are in a good place, and we're headed together in the right direction. We've got great work is still to be done, and the feeling safe between both cabinet and us that there is some work that still needs to be done, and that we can be open about and ask questions, but we're headed in the right direction together.
And I don't know that I didn't learn this today, but there's no group that I would want to serve with other than these people. I mean, like, this is just an amazing group to be a part of, when the good, bad, and the ugly, right, is going on. You know, to echo something Suzanne said, I had the awesome opportunity to be on the tax appraisal district. And I left that because I did not enjoy, right, in the precious time that I have, right, you know, that just wasn't my thing. And so I very much carry the same feeling that you have, right? Like, I do this because of you all and because of, you know, what we're doing, and it's super worthwhile. So thank you all for being a part of that.
Anytime that we have discussions like this, it always reinforces in my own mind the common thread that we share, which is why I think we're successful as a group. And the respect that we have for each other. Because I respect all these folks. I respect their opinions. I want to hear their opinions. And I factor all that into my own mind when I make a decision about something. Even though I'm trying to vote my own values, I do take into consideration what they're saying, because they represent other parts of this district. It's just not my district, it's all of their areas as well. And they hear from different people. So that's the biggest takeaway for me, plus the fact that it reinforces that, man, we are doing okay. When people from the outside come in and say, I heard that before, and I thought, people are just saying that. When I first got on this board, they're saying how we do it. You guys are different. I thought, is somebody just saying that to kind of stroke the feathers a little bit, or is that really true? Well, Linda's been around in other districts. She sees that. Matt said the same thing. So I'm starting to believe it.
Go to SLI with board members, won't sit with each other?
Yeah.
In the same class?
Yeah. That's just crazy. Like Suzanne says, I wouldn't want to serve.
No.
Why would I serve on that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's enough discord and conflict in life itself. You know, we're here for a common goal, and we're going to keep fighting. That's what this board's going to do.
The thing that I appreciate, not to interrupt you, ma'am, I'm sorry, but if I don't get it out, I'm gonna forget because I'm aging over here. The thing that I appreciate about this particular training, having been through others, is how personal this has felt. This has felt like it really hit home. We've had trainings where, you know, toward the end, you know, we're reading the framework and we're all adopting a piece of the framework. I'm just saying. This has really felt personal. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I thank you for not bringing that up.
Oh, wait, there's one more thing.
Let me hand that one over.
I wanna get a measure
One more
of this.
handout.
I always thought it was the law.
I don't know, but I just appreciate not seeing it right now. But really, seriously, this has really felt personal, and it, for the first time in 11 years, it really has felt like a team building. So I appreciate the exercise and all the comments and just all of you guys.
Yeah, and this couldn't happen without the kind of people that you are and the care and respect that you all have for one another. And I am going to say you all are a very special board, very unique, and I am serious about you need to somehow bottle this and share it because what you have is special. So it is my pleasure and honor to be with you all, and I just encourage you to keep doing great work for your community and for your kids, and advocate for them. But thank you all very much. So,
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
Wrapping this up.
All right, that concludes our special board meeting tonight. And there being no further business, we are adjourned at 7:46 p.m.